The best and the worst weapon locations in Battletech. That's what we're going to jump in. And of course, any weapon is a good weapon, and I'm going to fire every weapon that I possibly can. And based on the mech configuration, the tonnage, as you move into mediums, heavies, and assaults, you've got the raw tonnage to mount more weapons. And if you want to take advantage of that, you only have so many weapon points. Jumping in, the worst place to mount a weapon, and I love this mech. I do. The Crusader. It's kind of an odd machine in that it's got the missiles down there offhand, and my fellow mech warriors and mech commanders will correct me. I can't think of another inner sphere mech. Might be some obscure mech out there. Another stock inner sphere mech that has weapons in the legs. The challenge here is you can't kick. I mean, usually when you get into physical attacks, you will remember, okay, don't fire those hand weapons unless you're using the punch-through rule. But kicks, it's you fire those weapons, you forget. Likewise, certain hex maps with water, if you flooded that, you can't open that weapon port. So the legs with the weapons just on the worst place for me. There's a couple of things to remember in that moment, and not every mech has them. It's easy to forget, and you're like, well, I want to kick. Fritz, I love you, brother, but you just fired those missiles. You can't. Okay, I want to fire. Dude, you can't open the ports, or you can, but you're underwater getting that cover. Or I want to fire those missiles. Well, you're obscured level 1 behind that building. You can't. Well, like, actually, the windows are here. Like, I can fire them through the windows. Can we dice that off, right? It's kind of an odd weapon location. On the plus side, most mechs have an okay amount of armor on their legs, and losing a weapon there, well, if I lose that weapon because my leg got blown off, I kind of have other bigger problems. Second location, and I would vote this as the worst location, but Battletech being Battletech, we see it the most, arm-based weapons. So it's natural. We're putting quad mechs aside for a second, like the Scorpion and the Goliath. You have arms, you mount weapons on them. You have a range of fire. The challenge here, of course, is they can mount numerous weapons. They have the tonnage bracket, but they're the most vulnerable just based on the Battletech universe, the Battletech rules. You have the least amount for each weight class armor bubbles on there. When those armor bubbles go to internals, because it's going to happen the quickest because you have the least amount of armor, putting the head aside. Head is its own thing. Then once we get to there, you go into internals, you might survive the crit farm, but you're going to lose your arm, and based on the damage transfer. So it's very easy to lose weapons in the arm, and if it's your primary weapon, right, if it's a medium with an autocannon 10, if it's a PPC, you lose that cuts down the firepower. If it's something like the Marauder, and I love the Marauder. If you've been following my channel, I always play the Marauder. I love it. But you've got the primary weapons, that laser and that PPC mounted in that arm, that hand paddle. You lose that, you're down not only primary, but a secondary. It's very, very interesting, and this is where most weapons get lost. The flexibility in that is you can mount a variety of weapons there. Also keeping in mind, though, you can't punch in the basic rules. The expanded Total Warfare rules you can. You can't punch in the basic rules with an arm-based weapon if you fire it. So depending on the machine, I need to kind of take that in account. If I think I might get into hand-to-hand combat with my Marauder, I mean, it happens. Primarily, I try to avoid it. It's not really a hand-to-hand machine. I have to decide firing those lasers, firing that PPC and those lasers, or entering into hand-to-hand combat. The best location, simple mathematics, the torso. If I can mount it in the center torso, you've got to transfer through a lot to make it there. You got to blow off the arm, you got to go into left, you got to transfer to center. If I lose my center torso weapon, I'm kind of out of the game, because either things have barring a lucky hit to a crit, Snake Eyes crit, you got to chew through arms and torsos, or torsos to center, or you've got to pound away at the center. So the best is the center location, and we see a number of mechs with this configuration. Side left and right torso, also good, because you've got a decent amount of armor. If you lose that weapon, it goes through. That can happen, but I've got this. It also frees up the arms for punching, utilizing that. So I can always count on firing those weapon of complements and punching. And we see a couple of interesting mechs that are pure center torso-ish, of course, or left and right. The Awesome. The Awesome is a great example of that mech. You've got the stock. You've got the left and right PPCs in those torso. This is firing on and on and on. You've got the Battle Fist in the other hand, and you've got the PPC in the other arm. You lose that PPC, yes, you're down on the firepower, but you've still got tons and tons of left, right, center armor pushing that forward. On a side note, for newer mech warriors, sometimes on the forums, you'll hear this this statement, zombie mech. A zombie mech is a mech that has its weapons in its torsos. So you blow off its arms. It has no arms. It's still stumbling around. I've done a lot of damage to this machine. I've blown off both arms, but it's still outputting that firepower every turn because the weapons are locked into the torso. Compared to, say, a machine that has like a large laser in the left arm, machine guns in the right arm, kind of like Phoenix Hawk configuration. You lose both those arms. Now you're out. Like, what are you going to do? Maybe I got that small laser in the head I'm going to try and zap you with. So we see this terminology of a zombie mech and how we utilize that. The center torso stuff, two mechs that come to example, building also on the Awesome, the Spider. Now, it's a light mech. I really don't want to get shot. If we compare it to the Jenner, which has its primary lasers mounted in the arms, very quickly, there's so little armor, it drops those weapons off, where the Spider has that. Other synergies, the Javelin. This is a lightish type mech, lower weight class that I love playing. It has two short-range missile six-packs with just enough reloads to get into trouble. And I've pushed up the Javelin up to the Battletech playlist here. We're going to re-explore it in a little bit. But I like this mech as an example of good, or I should say interesting weapon configurations and locations. You've got two six-packs, SRM six-packs in the center, in the torso. It's got just enough ammo to get you in trouble. It encourages you to get up there close and fire them. Well, if I'm getting up that close, I might as well punch you. I have no weapons in the arms. I'm going to punch, missile. I might as well, if I'm going to punch you and have those SRMs, get to absolute short point blank range. If I'm going to do that, I might as well risk anything and go rear armor. Rear armor on anything but like an Awesome, which has more armor value on a rear armor than some lights and mediums. Any real mech of light, medium, heavy, or lower assault, if I can get to rear armor and punch, missile, maybe kick, that's very interesting. Or at least the punch, missile, firing that spread, that's huge. So having the center torso opens up, the left and right torso opens up a lot. But again, weapons configuration, any weapon is a good weapon, but understanding the probability of losing a weapon where it's located, understanding the firepower of how things stay up based on its location, and then, of course, understanding just these little odd nuances where if you're not regularly playing the Crusader, there will be some times where you forget a rule and you're like, well, I can't do that, or that takes out something. And mechs that have those weapon locations, especially if it's a larger or a primary weapon, or in that moment you see the shot, you see the tactica, we don't want that to happen. So I'm going to finish asking my fellow mech warriors, mech commanders, mech enthusiasts, what other mechs, because I've been sitting here thinking and I can't, and I don't want to cheat and check out the Battletech tech manuals. What other mechs mount weapons in the legs for that configuration? Any weight class, where do we see them?